Come on guys, it's not plugged in obviously. Don't do it. Hi, I'm Matt and this is NotEnoughTECH. I'm going to start this video with a warning. I'm going to deal with high voltage electricity. It's dangerous. If you don't know what you're doing, don't touch it. Alright, with the disclaimer out of the way, let's talk about automating lights. Automating lights is probably one of the most impressive and the most basic automations you can deploy in your house, and you can do it in more than one way. Why it is impressive? It's impressive because nothing screams "the future is here" like turning the lights on and off using voice commands. Because there is more than one way to skin the cat, you can approach this problem in one of three ways. You can use a smart light bulb. And it's cheap, it's easy, because you can just screw or push the bulb in depending on where you live, and there you go. Connect it to an app through a smart speaker, and you've automated your light source. But there is a catch. Usually comes with a switch like that, or a switch in your lamp that you no longer will be able to use to trigger the device, because the moment you're gonna flip the switch, that will stop working. Another way you can automate your light would be with a smart switch, like for example with this Son of Basic. This device goes in line with your power cable, which means it suffers from a similar problems with switching, meaning if you switch the device off using a flip switch or button switch on your lamp, you'll no longer be able to operate a device via smart options. So a much clever way of using switches is deploying one of those small switches. I don't think this is Son of Mini or Shelly, and you can watch a video about them in here. And they solve all the problems apparently. So you can fit them behind the fitting, which, well, it is slightly complicated sometimes. But you will be able to use an existing switch, so the old-fashioned traditional switch like this, and you'll be able to use a smart functionality. Now, lastly, and this is where we're heading, is actually replacing a wall switch with a smart switch like this one or like this one. What are the benefits of actually automating your lights with a smart switch instead of a smart light bulb? First of all, it is potential cost savings feature. If you have an over-the-top lampshade that takes 6 bulbs, you would have to replace all of them in order to get that source of light automated, something you can easily do with a single switch. Another benefit of wall switches is actually ability to use the wall switch itself, for example, instead of voice commands, which is problematic if you're trying to do it at night and not to wake anyone else in the process. Since this video is all about wall light switches, let's talk about why and when you should use smart wall light switches. First of all, let's talk about Wi-Fi versus other interfaces and what are the benefits of doing it the Wi-Fi way and what are the benefits of doing it with a different protocol like zigbee. The latency on these switches is very small, which means you will be able to toggle the lights very quickly and repeat those commands quickly as well, which isn't the case when using, for example, zigbee. Now, the other added benefits are not using any additional hubs, so you'll be able to link them with your Wi-Fi and use that Wi-Fi router instead. I will assume you already have a Wi-Fi router at home. Now, these often being based around ESP chips means they can be easily hacked, and the software is already available out there, so if you want to run a custom firmware, that is also possible. So what are the disadvantages of Wi-Fi switches? It is yet another Wi-Fi device that's gonna clog your network. These devices are vulnerable to attacks because your home automation setup and your home network is always as strong as the weakest link. You have to make sure you get the Wi-Fi switches from reputable sources, because since they are connected directly to your Wi-Fi, things can happen. We talked about Wi-Fi, so let's talk about other protocols, and I'm going to use zigbee as an example. First of all, these devices will act as routers or repeaters. Zigbee devices, the ones that are constantly connected to power, have the ability to relay the messages from other Zigbee devices, which means that the Zigbee network is going to be much greater and mesh overall is going to be stronger, something that the Wi-Fi sockets cannot do. Now, the second benefit of that, because they interact with the different protocols, these devices aren't directly exposed to the Wi-Fi network, and as such can't be hacked from outside of the network. You'd have to be actually in the proximity of the Zigbee devices to have an attempt of hacking it. Now, the disadvantages of running Zigbee devices, first of all, you will need some sort of router, whether it's IKEA router, whether it's a CC2531 or CON B2, you will need something to translate that Zigbee signal into something that is available on your Wi-Fi. Now, another thing is, because it's Zigbee, because it's low powered, those devices are slightly slower in response, so the latency is greater, and also you can overflow those devices by sending too many commands at the same time, so responsiveness of these is going to be much slower, comparable to a Wi-Fi interface. And lastly, to end this on a positive note, these devices also can be hacked, and nowadays there is a custom Zigbee firmware that can be flashed on switches like this. Once you know your protocol, it's time to inspect your walls and see how your switch is wired. Depending on your location and whoever wired your house, you might come across two different standards of wiring your light switches. First of all, it's going to be the one which is more present in America, and this is this switch which requires a neutral and a live wire to be present in the wall hole. Now, if you live in UK or your house has been wired that you only need a live wire to operate a switch, chances are the switch like this is going to operate your light fitting. And the easiest way to find out which one's yours is to unscrew the wall plate, and be careful in there, make sure you power down the electricity first, and examine how many cables you have inside of that cubby. To make things complicated, you have to determine how many gangs you have inside of your wall switch. You might need a 1 gang, a 2 gang, or 3 gang switch to operate all your lights in a fitting. And to make things worse, some of the switches have 2 or 3-way operation, which just complicates everything. Hey, did you know if you hack your wall switch and pick 1 extra gang that is required for your fitting, you can do cool things like this? In a scenario with live and neutral wire, they're going to be connected to the main circuit for lightning. So you're going to have your live and you're going to have your neutral. Depending on this wall switch you use, it might have terminals for every cable, including the neutral line and the loop for the light bulb. Observe the terminal markings and connect appropriate wires. So start with the live, connect the neutral, and you'll be able later on to hook up each gang. If you have more than 1 gang, connect every single gang where it belongs, and then make sure that the neutral from the gang is also connected to the same terminal. And there you go. In no neutral wire scenario, you're going to have a live wire that goes to the ceiling, then to the switch via a separate loop. Now, when the switch is closed, that goes back to the loop in the ceiling again. There's a separate loop for the light bulb, and that goes back to the neutral, to the main circuit. To use no neutral wire switch correctly, you have to identify live wire. That goes to a specific terminal, which is labeled Elle in here, and then your gangs usually go to L1, 2, 3, depending on how many gangs you use. And in this switch, because you don't use neutral, neutral is connected elsewhere. There you go. Sometimes a switch requires you to install high voltage capacitor, which has to be placed between a neutral wire coming from the circuit and a live wire coming from the switch itself. The purpose of this capacitor is to deliver enough current for the switch to work correctly. It's time for a conclusion, guys. Home automation is a very personal thing, and like with everything that is highly personal, there is no a single right way. So before you start automating your lights, examine the situation and think what benefits you most and use the solution that is best for everything. So probably if you just want to add a single smart light to your set, getting a light bulb, a smart light bulb that you can simply pop into your lamp and never touch again would be a perfect solution. But if you're going for something more robust and something that's going to be used by everyone in a household, going for a smart switch might not be a bad idea, especially if you're trying to automate more than a single source of light. As usual, guys, I do not have a posting schedule, so if you're interested in my articles and videos, it's best to follow me on social media listed here. As for now, I'm gonna say thanks so much for watching, and I'm going to see you in the next video. Take care. Bye. Something like this. Oh.